the session From Phone to YouTube to Phone Again, focusing specifically the role of user-generated content on the mobile future. My name is Rick Bolander. I'm with Gabriel Venture Partners. It's an early-stage venture firm focused on very capital-efficient companies, so it goes hand in glove with this whole area of DRM. And some companies in the areas that we have invested in, such as Jack, Tap-a-Tap, and iSpot, are companies that are very capital-efficient, looking to address this very fast-growing market. I'm very pleased to introduce the panelists today who come from various parts of the ecosystem, from content providers, content creation technology, distribution enabling technology, DRM portal, and mobile experience. So we've got a very good spectrum to deal with some of the issues, the opportunities, the challenges that exist in the space today. With $80 billion of TV advertising revenue up for grab in the viable triple play that the cable guys are going after, now coming to mobile, it's very interesting and challenging to explore what are the opportunities in the near future. IPTV has been noted as a technology that's going to allow for the distribution of all this rich content to come over to mobile, and the researchers have suggested that there will be 50 million subscribers by 2010 and revenue at 1.3 billion. Today we hope to hear from the panelists, is that fact or fiction, and what will be required to make it happen. First, I'd like to introduce Jeremy Welt, on my left, Vice President of New Media at Warner Brothers. He has a decade experience in media, music, and entertainment, and he uses new media to market Warner Brothers content of artists such as Red Hot Chili Peppers, Madonna, Eric Clapton, Josh Groban, Mike Jones, and many more. Moving to the enabling of the technology side, next to Jeremy is, at Meta Cafe, Eric Smith, who's in charge of programming. And prior to programming, he led programming at MBTV.
Moby TV.
Moby TV. Next, Larry Gitlin.
You didn't get my bio, so we made that bio up in about 10 seconds. So that's why it was so short. I've done more than that, I promise.
Thank you for covering for me. Next is Larry Gitlin, VP of Business Development at Handheld Entertainment. He's been there for 15 years in business development. He's running production and post-production companies since the mid-'80s, working on film and TV shows, such as the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Hell Hunters, and Firearm. Next on the panel, next to Larry.
Just to be clear, I've been in Handheld for 3 years.
3 years.
Before that, I was Vice President of Business Development at Quest Communications in their digital media. And
thank you, Larry. Next, another change in the program from what you have is Kathy Puckers, who was with Packet Video, head of worldwide sales, marketing, and business development, and previously with TI. And lastly, another substitute from what you show on your program, Jen Grenz with Soju, who is a senior marketing director. Jen's responsible for marketing functions, including product marketing, partner marketing, and marketing communications. Prior to that, she began her career at Procter & Gamble. So with those introductions, I'd like to dive into it. Instead of going straight down into mobile, preparing for this panel, the panelists had suggested that we talk about DRM and the business case and the business model for DRM up front. Specifically, there are issues overall around the business model on subscription revenue models, advertising revenue models, and download revenue models, and talk about what is going to be most profitable and what are the risks and challenges in developing these business models, whether it be on internet or whether it be in wireless. So I'd like each of the panelists to address that. Starting with Jeremy.
Not quite sure how to address the DRM issue. I can just speak on our end. Where we're at is the challenge in our role right now is to use these new visual outlets via mobile and via sites like YouTube and Meta Cafe to get to not only to develop new businesses around, but to really get across who our artists are. And we found that this new ecosystem, there's really three parts. The new ecosystem of these new video sites is extremely powerful to get across the imaging and the branding of our artists to sell our traditional products. So not just monetizing it itself, but as a new marketing vehicle. The music video has kind of gone away as the visual cue that you use to represent what an artist is about. MTV doesn't play videos anymore that much. VH1 doesn't play them. And that used to be the chunk that a music fan or consumer could see that one piece of content, feel for the artist, and then go purchase the CD or the other revenue streams, and that's all deconstructing. So what we have right now is we have the challenge to move our entire visuals into this new world, and we've done that with some major artists and have some of the most streamed content ever on YouTube for some of our artists. And right now, we're rising up and seeing that is an opportunity where we may be making a lot of our money in the future, as opposed to selling plastic discs, because the traffic is so high, and we've been able to achieve millions and millions of streams, almost 78 million across 8 or 9 properties that we've done with YouTube and trials, and that's creating original programming, that's sending user-generated content up, all mixed together, just on 6 or 7 projects, 80 million streams. And if we start to look at that has done great things to promote and sell our CDs, but it's also a business model in itself. So I guess what I'm saying is right now we're kind of right in between. We're using this stuff to support our digital music sales and the business models that exist, but we're also waiting for the ad sales to catch up, because if we start monetizing some of this stuff on the video side, we'd be making more money from those streams than we would from the digital sales of music. So we're right in that inflection point right now where it's...
And before moving over, to Eric, could you just comment specifically on how are you dealing with the mashing with user-generated content,
Right.
and how do you address that in the business model?
Well, we're setting that up in our deals to try to take advantage of that. Because of a lot of the publishing issues, it's very difficult. But we are paving the way so that we can, and building into our plans, to monetize user-generated content around our artist music. I'll give you just one little brief example of a product that we developed with an artist, Ashley Tisdale. Ashley Tisdale used her mobile phone. She used the Shozu technology, and she was uploading clips she's a big superstar from High School Musical. Instead of doing fancy music videos, we did all what I like to call artist-generated content, which is a very important middle ground between professional content and user-generated content. It's user-generated content, but from a celebrity that people know, and very engaging because they're not used to seeing stars kind of with that behavior. So we used her mobile video to create the second biggest YouTube channel in music in history, over 16 million streams of content just from her phone. And when we released the digital album, what we did on iTunes is we included 2 tracks that were instrumentals. And we created a promotion with YouTube where you were allowed to take those 2 instrumental tracks and make your own videos and upload those. And it was built into the product. When you bought her digital album, iTunes store, it told you that there's these 2 tracks. I called it the Digital Activity Edition, and it was kind of a cool way to think. It's a digital album that you buy. It's made for you to listen to, but it's also made for you to create. So iTunes, Ashley Tisdale, Warner Bros., and YouTube combined to create a one-off product that was a test of what we might see down the road. We had hundreds, over thousands of people create these videos and submit them, and all that stuff is going to be monetizable in the future. Deals take a long time, the publishing takes a long time, the songwriting, figuring all these issues out is complicated, but we are down that path, and we're launching products that are designed to make money, not just off the sale of the asset, but off the user-generated content as well.
Great, thank you. Kevin?
I think if you look at, the biggest issue around user-generated content really is rights. I mean, obviously, Jeremy doesn't want to give stuff out and let people do whatever they want to with it. He wants to have some control over what people do with their assets. At Metacafe is a website very similar to a lot of the other, video sharing websites that are out there. We had 26 million unique views last month, and hundreds of millions of page views. So we got a lot of people coming to our site, and we've really tried to take a stance and say we're not a site that's built on piracy. So we really encourage users to come through, create and build and upload their own content. In a streamed environment, DRM doesn't really matter that much because people aren't taking that and storing that. But when you move over to a mobile phone, that device is designed to allow things to be downloaded and stored. So I think what you're starting to see is a lot of companies look at how they want to operate inside that environment, where a video that might be okay to be streamed may not be okay to be downloaded. So then all of a sudden you have to go to the next level and say, well, if we're going to acquire rights for something, streaming rights are much, much easier to get than download rights. So if there's a download right that you have to have as part of that, there better be some DRM that's the platform that's going to. And that platform could be mobile, that platform could be PC, it could be almost anything. So When I was at Moby TV, we made a stance that we were going to only do streaming. So we had no download capabilities whatsoever. Our metaphor was live television, so it was very easy for us to go through, well, easy's a big word, but it was easier for us to go acquire the rights for the stream content than it was for the download. So I think there's a lot of challenges still associated with that. Streaming, as I said, is just much, much easier for people to get their.
Eric, do you feel that with all the different mashing tools and vehicles out there, that it could come back to MetaCafe and to your business model if copyright and content providers want to go to the source of the content?
Yeah, so I think, you know, the mashup capabilities, and I know you guys have an investment in iSpot. iSpot is a company that allows you to go through and mash up different technologies. And, you know, if you look at that, we want to incorporate tools like iSpot directly into MetaCafe. And then it would make more sense for me to go directly to Jeremy and say, hey, assets that you guys want to make available to the users, and we'll run that contest for you. We'll go ahead and store all the files on our servers in a secure environment, and then when someone goes through and creates a mashup, really what that mashup is just a series of pointers to specific pieces of content that live on my server. So what happens is you never really give the user that file. They just have the ability to play that file, and that file lives securely on my environment where I've got it very much protected.
And I just wanted to say one thing, as you go through and you rights, and you think about piracy, you think about being on the labels, obviously we always get beat up about, but picture this environment when you think about rights. Don't think about the label, don't think about piracy. Think about an artist who comes into my office and sees a user-generated piece of content that's on the top of the charts of YouTube, that is someone parodying their song or doing something goofy to it, and the artist doesn't like it, they don't feel like it's a good representation of their work, and they want me to take it down. That happens on a regular basis, so you have to remember that when you talk about user-generated content, and this we're all thrilled about it, the artists themselves often didn't intend their music, and they consider it art, to be interpreted that way. And so that's why there's artist rights, and it's not just...
Jeremy, that's a very good point. We'll definitely come back to that because there's a notion of professional content creation versus amateur. And
just one last, I think on that, you picked Ashley because she was the right artist to do that.
That's right, she was into it, she was open to it,
exactly.
but there's plenty of artists who are just like, no thanks.
Yeah, Madonna wouldn't be a great one to do that with, I can imagine.
So Larry, tell us what you think the holy grail is in the business model with user-generated content.
Well, I think if I really knew, I wouldn't tell anybody, right? I just do it. Our view is a little bit different, but I think it's all complementary. We started out as a player company. We build a device called the Z-View, which dominates the sub $100 market. And we're in all the Walmart stores, and we started out as a content site that was for portable media players. And since then, we really, I built that entertainment division, and then since then we really branched out. We acquired 6 or 7 other sites. So today, we're building what we call the handheld entertainment network. So it's very similar to what you might think of as what RCA did and NBC did in the 20s and the 30s, really, well, actually the 30s and the early 40s. And so today, we're building a network of owned sites and then doing affiliate deals also, much in the way of early syndication, so that we want to leverage a large audience that we can give our content to, our user-generated content and premium content. We really believe that both of those need to be wedded to all of our vendors and all of our customers as well. So today we represent probably, I think north of about 15 or 20 million unique visitors, 80 million plus page views, but it's a combination of user-generated content and premium content. So I'm in deals with Showtime and IMG and all the major networks, and so we think that if you look at the analyst reports and what it seems to be very popular or most popular, people still want to come to the internet, try to get episodes and other kinds of content that they missed in normal programming, and do that on their PC and then peripherally on their portable. Forrester is correct, about 2% of everything that gets downloaded from the internet ends up on a portable media player.
So you want all business models to work because that just benefits you.
Yeah, we actually look at a PC. For us, a PC is a portable media player as well. Anything that represents a screen, what we call a screen that is most relevant to the consumer. And so in that way, a lot of user-generated content that's out there is fabulous. It's funny, it's raunchy, it's crazy, but the advertisers aren't jumping in necessarily to that because they don't want their brand associated for videos where they, you know, light cats on fire. I mean, that's just not what they want, you know, and I'm not particularly fond of that myself. But that's what's out there. If you look at what's popular, I mean, there's some pretty crazy stuff out there. So what we do is we do our best to scrub all that stuff and create what we call a safer work environment, or something that is, you know, we try to cut off the raunchiest 10%. And then wed that with premium channels such as Showtime and others, to be able to give our customers a place where they can get really a lot of things that they want with a lot of choice. We do both streaming with ad-supported or download. So if they want to own those shows, if they want to own Tutors, if they want to own L Word or Sleeper Cell or something, they can buy it. Or if they want to see something streamed, they can stream it, watch the ads. So for us, it's really, you know, the marketplace is not, you know, well defined. I love the idea of what Jeremy's talking about. I know that the user generated from the artists are fantastic. It's really, I think, I would agree with him that, you know, it's changing the face of what music videos used to be and how artists really get out, and that's the hot spot. And so we do that. We license that content. We're in deals with Sony, BMG, and, you know, 20 or 30 different record labels, and that's where we think the industry is going. We think it's that in terms of monetizing it, I have over 500,000 user-generated clips, and they're great to drive traffic, but of making money from it, you have to be a little more careful. And so the artist kinds of created user gen that is supported by the artist, done by the artist, where you don't have to worry about rights, and premium content, we think is really where it's going.
Right. Jen at Sozu, is it the same? You want all business models to work because that just enables your business model?
So, I mean, we work in the mobile world, and that has yet to be defined as far as the business model goes. We can support the subscription model, we can support the advertising model, the sponsorship model, whichever way this route goes. But I agree, user-generated content is a game changer, and it's going to start with the artist-generated content or the professional user-generated content, which is going to weed out the raunchy content, so to speak. But I heard a statistic at the last conference I was at that said 99% of YouTube participants are watchers, they're viewers, right? So if we can capitalize on the artist-generated content, the professional-generated content, and be bringing that down to the mobile, it shows you downloads and caches to the mobile device, so we can implement and work with a lot of those DRM solutions that people are creating just to manage the mobile device. But then people want to watch, they want to consume. So it's about publishing from the mobile device up to the web, and then more importantly, closing that loop back down and getting that user-generated content back down to the cell phone. And whether that's sponsored by a subscription model, whether that's a sponsorship model, whether that's user-generated advertising model, I think that there's a possibility for that too. I think we got to flush it out to see where it's going to go, but user-generated content is definitely where it's headed.
Thank you. And Kathy, is it on the content side or is it on the distribution side? If you don't have the distribution for quality, obviously people can't have a good user experience in the mobile. Packet Video has a unique position. Qualcomm didn't win the business with Sprint to roll out a mobile band network. WiMAX seemed to be the name for the day, but yet we haven't seen that roll out, and we don't seem to get any kind of real dates when it's going to come out. What's your perspective on when the business model is going to be willing to take traction and the infrastructure is going to be in place?
So we look at that business model proving itself out. Now I agree with everything that's been said on the panel in terms of we have some of the answers now, but we certainly don't have all the answers. And so his view of the world is really to create solutions that solve real problems out there. And the problem or the challenge statement is that there's multiple types of DRM technology. So starting from a technology platform, there's multiple types of technology. There's multiple types of networks that technology can be delivered over. You just brought up WiMAX, and most of us are still thinking about 2.5G and 3G. And then you have, from a user perspective, they hope this doesn't offend anyone, or maybe it will and create exciting conversation, but they don't really, we believe they don't really care whether it's broadcast or video on demand or streaming. They just want to be able to get what they want when they want and be able to share that with their friends if they want to, and have that be an easy experience. And in terms of the business models, there's, like I mentioned before, there's multiple types of DRM, and it's really the mobile operator that's going to decide the right DRM for them. And what they're really interested in is the breadth of products that they can support with all this cool data, with all this cool music and video applications, and to have it be cost effective and to have the user be able to navigate through. I mean, if you look at some of the top mobile operators around the world that have, you know, really advanced music and video services, when you're in streaming radio and you are interested in a song, there's another mobile operator I'm thinking of, you have to one of the world's largest, you have to actually tag that song, exit the streaming radio application, then go into your music on demand and purchase it over the air. And think of how many more sales you could have if you could actually tag that music in streaming radio and buy it then, or buy the ringtone. And the same can be extrapolated to video. And that's where, you know, Packet Video looks at the world and developing technology so that all of this stuff that we're talking about on the panel today can exist on the handset and be usable, easy, and allow mobile operators to integrate these services into the handset quickly.
Thank you. So one common theme we have here is user-generated content is creating a greater interest and opportunities for different revenue models to take place. And in that scope, we've heard that specifically advertising revenue models and download models are very sensitive with and with the association with advertisers on how that content gets distributed. I'd like to hear some comments from the panel here regarding where is the innovation then for the next phase of development? Is it on the digital rights side and the filtering for creative licensing models, or is it truly on the technology enabler side in the near future?
I think it's actually both. We have to.
That's a cop.
Audible. Well, not really, because it's true. Audible Magic and several other companies are dealing with the rights issues because you have to protect the artist's rights. And so with all the user-generated mashups and things like that, you've got to have a way of identifying what is copyrighted material, what isn't, and get it off your network, because we get hit with that all the time. We're constantly complying and complying with the majors and other copyrighted material that says take it off the net. We have that. So anything, the technology that enables us to be able to identify that first is very helpful, and you're seeing that in Audible Magic and others. On the other side, the innovation to me comes creatively, where some of the made-for internet stuff, like what Barry Diller's doing, what Eisner's doing, where they're taking 90-minute webisodes, and you know, there's a lot of interest around that to try to take pieces that have one life as a syndicated hour or 1 hour, and then break it up into small pieces and then sell that or do advertising against that over and over. So I think you're going to see more and more professional user-generated content separated out from amateur user-generated content. And I think that's, in terms of creatively where the business is going, people like to see things oftentimes that are, well, let's put it this way, advertisers are more willing to put their name on something that's more polished and more professional, and you know, maybe supports a well-known celebrity or a celebrity upcoming. So I think that's where it's going.
I mean, as the quality increases, the advertising will increase, period. You know, there's two kinds of user-generated content. There's true user-generated content that's created for this medium or PC, and then there's user-stolen content. Let's be clear, there's a lot of user-stolen content out there, and I think the bulk of user-generated content today is user-stolen content. But you see lawsuits and all kinds of things happening to try to get away from that stuff. And as the models open up for true user-generated content around advertisements and around sponsorship and around, you know, professional content producers creating content for new mediums, you'll see this thing really, really explode. So, you know, right now the gap is there. Anybody can post anything, anytime. That is a wonderful thing to think about. But also think about the fact that anybody can post anything, anywhere, anytime. So you get just a complete spectrum of the different things that are out there. And over time, the quality will naturally rise to the top. And that's what I think you're going to start seeing happening over time. There's always going to be a place for, you know, a cat crapping in a Frisbee. As funny as that is, that's always going to be there. But at the end of the day, if that was the television model, we would have 24 hours, 7 days a week of America's Funniest Home Videos, and that would be the only thing that's on television. That's really what that is.
So Eric, on that note, it touches on one of the topics we had talked about. What is the role of professional programming, and as TV broadcasting has, with various thematic channels, such as Channel for Animation, pop culture, news, sports, comedy. What do you think will happen
I
there?
think people are already doing that. And, you know, we're set up that way, and I think every other video sharing website is set up that way so that you can go through and sort and find content by the type of category that you're interested in.
And from your perspective, what brands will evolve from that model, and
Well,
how
I
will
mean,
the players play?
You know, that's a very interesting question. If I knew what the brands were, I'd them now and retire in,
Well,
in
that's
10
what
years.
yeah.
But I think, you know, you have to really look at the medium. And, you know, if you take a step back and you look at, you know, television, you know, in the 30s and 40s, we had a couple of television brands that were sponsored by advertisers, and those things did well, and they lived on for a long time. Well, all of a sudden, when cable came out, you had the ability for new brands to come out. CNN couldn't have existed in 1940. There just wasn't the technology, there wasn't the bandwidth, there wasn't the interest, there wasn't anything to be able to support that. But because cable was a type of operation, it enabled specialty networks to come out. Next, you look at things like the internet. Brands like eBay, Yahoo, those, Google, they never existed, but because there wasn't a medium to support those things. Now this next thing is mobile, and you know, we're talking a lot about user-generated, but let's talk about what a lot of folks are here for is for mobile, and let's look at what that next brand for mobile is. I believe that the dominant brand in mobile will not be taking television and cramming it onto this little tiny screen, but it'll that are made specifically for that platform, shot for that platform, shot for a user who's spending a short amount of time on this. You know, you're not going to sit here for 24 hours and watch this. You're going to watch this in short bursts when you have time. The content needs to reflect that. It needs to be easy to use, easy to understand, and absolutely targeted for the platform. So I don't think that brand's there yet.
I think that segues very well into Jeremy. Could you provide us a case study with the artist-generated content, and to say what is more relevant? Is it quality or relevance?
Well,
and where does brand fit into that?
Relevance, we're finding, can trump production value often with today's audience. Relevance and timeliness can definitely trump production value. As the example with Ashley Tisdale, it was 16 million streams on YouTube to date with just this phone right here and a cost of the phone, and that was it, and we're off and running. But to address the part of the content ecosystem and how it's all going to work and feed off what you're saying, I consider myself one of the professional content creators. I have to get with artists, and I have to make things for this new world, and I have to break art. You can't just make a music video. So what we're talking about here, and who will be successful, is the people who can find a way to tie together all the threads and the content levels we're talking about, right? So let's dive into just user-generated content for a second. There's all these different ways you can look at it, but a lot of user-generated content, you brought up a great point about the piracy, I brought up artist-generated content, but a lot of user-generated content is in response to mainstream media content, right? So you can't ignore the role that you can't separate user-generated content necessarily from Lost or Heroes. People are feeding off that and making their content based on the cultural mediums that exist. So the way that I see it is, and the winners will be the people who can tie these pieces together. So you got YouTube representing the user-generated side, then you have ABC who's still representing the premium side, and then the gap fills in all the way between. So what we need to do is when I'm creating a piece of content, here are my guidelines. I want everything from the top level to the bottom, and it's all one thing to me. I want to create a piece that's good enough to air on primetime television on ABC. It may never, the band may not break or it may not happen, but it's got to be good enough to support TV broadcast, to be on MTV, to be on ABC. It's got to have that quality because I want that top end. Because my goal is to create content that not only is content in itself, but I want to create content that creates more content. In other words, if I'm doing a good job at creating original online programming, I'm encouraging and tying into the very nature of the piece of content I'm creating, the ability and the encouragement for people to make their own and increase the canon of that piece of work. So if I can generate a piece of generates 1 million views for the content itself, but generates 10 million views and people taking it and making their own thing, and gets aired on ABC, and some mash of it ends up over here, that's the win. You want to cover the broad spectrum. And when I do that, when I talk about the Ashley Tisdale example, I took iTunes, I took Nokia because that was the phone, I took Shozu because that was the technology that uploaded, I took YouTube, and I put it all together myself, and to the consumer, it felt like the way that they do things. There was mobile video, there was digital music, there was YouTube. Worked the way the consumer behavior worked. But I had to go take and do a one-off situation and combine all these different people to present something to the consumer that felt natural to them. So,
Jeremy, do you feel that the artists can just go around becoming their own production studio with their camera?
Not at all, because again, the Ashley Tisdale part, it was just one piece of it, right? I've got to spread it from TRL all the way down to YouTube, and the amount of work that went to go in to make the user-generated content part to the consumer, like a natural thing they could take into. It just doesn't happen that way. It's not just as easy as shooting and putting it up. There was messaging, there was timing, there was thought, there was partnerships, there was revenue stuff to figure out. It was transparent to the consumer, but the people who can piece together all these different partners and give experiences and branded experience around what the consumers are already doing will be the winner. And right now the consumers are taking it into their own hand. They're watching TV with their laptop, with their cell phone, and they're constructing their own connections through the way that they live, and we're just catching. We have a lot of individual pieces right, but the consumers are the ones who are taking it and tying it all together and making it happen.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, the thing that will really come out of this is it's as Jeremy said, it's produced content, branded produced content, and user-generated content living side by side and really integrated with each other. Because that's really what this is about, and that's where I think you'll really see this thing start to head going forward, and that's absolutely our direction. And
Jen,
the way
can you expand on this whole thought about the experience for the user on a mobile environment versus quality, and what limitations should people think about in the mobile environment with professional artists versus just general user-generated content?
So, taken from everything that's been said, it is going to be a blend. Professional user-generated content, and they might live in one channel. So say a user goes onto their mobile device and they subscribe to the Ashley Tisdale channel, and they get the professional ABC type clip, the premium content clip, to view it 1 or 3 times, and then it stops, or they can choose to purchase it, or whatever, monetization model we put around that. But that's also coupled with the video that she took last night at her most recent concert, or the photo that you could turn into a wallpaper for $2.99, or whatever monetization. So within one channel, say the Ashley Tisdale channel, there could be a blend of the professional content and the user-generated content, and the user is getting that very natural experience of interacting with the artist in that way. I also think that when it comes to advertising, that's going to be a really unique partnership. There's going to be more strategic alliances. So instead of a major brand, Coke, or one of the Procter & Gamble brands throwing up advertising on user-generated content, it's going to be more aligned and targeted. And that's the unique proposition with the mobile device, right? So it's not at all simulating the online mobile video experience. It's very much changing and crafting it for the mobile device, because it's a completely different ecosystem, to speak. So that's where we see it going.
And to pick up on that, Eric, what's your perspective on editing in the PC world versus the mobile world, which enables you to see?
Something just occurred to me. I don't know if it's appropriate to bring it up, but I kind of realize that we're really talking right now about a very sort of a professional, major media-based orientation. Certainly, all of the things that we're talking about work for people who are, in a major studio and a major network. But I was wondering if these guys might be interested in understanding how they participate, who are not part of a major media network, who do not have this big distribution. In other words, what's the win for other third parties that want to get into this space? We know that all the majors, if you're Warner Brothers or ABC or your HBO or whatever, you got a lock. You got a lock on that stuff. You already have a huge brand. You have a major distribution partner, and so we're just talking about slicing and dicing content to get it wherever or whatever. That's always been our model. We believe the future is that consumers want it where they want it, when they want it, and what they want. And so it can be, as Jen's talking about, we're all talking about is we take these big brands and these very popular brands, and we slice them and dice them and put them out into different formats, into different venues and different technologies that get it to the customer wherever they want it. But I think a lot of people who come to shows like this are third parties. They're people that don't have big brands. They're independent producers that are just starting out. They are independent music labels. There are all sorts of those kind of people and businesses that are trying to figure out how do they benefit from this. And I think if I can offer part of that solution. Part of that solution is to build a brand. The internet does give you the opportunity right now, if you're hot and if you do something that's relevant, you can build a huge brand. We for instance use the Smosh guys. I don't know if anybody knows who the Smosh guys are, but Eric and Ian, I met those guys a year and a half ago when they were just a couple of kids in Sacramento. They were 18 years old. They were doing this out of their living room. But we got together with them. We used them for a branded identity, and all of a sudden, the Z-View and the film that we did got seen by 10 million people. It was the #1 rated in comedy and several other genres on YouTube for 3 or 4 weeks after it came out. So what we're seeing is you know, certain people, like what Lonely Girl 15 did, even though that wasn't a person, it was certainly a way in and an orientation. So you have an opportunity to, if you are creative and have something that's relevant and can produce it even inexpensively, as I agree with my friends here, that quality will trump the actual technology, or excuse me, or relevance will trump the technology, as Jeremy has said. So if you can put out something that's funny or interesting or compelling or whatever, and put it into a distribution channel, whether it's Hermetic Cafe or us or whomever it is, you have an opportunity for the very first time in history, in a sense, this is kind of like the Warhol future come to life. You have an opportunity, because of access to mass distribution, to actually get into that and become successful without having to go through the bottleneck of a major media company, which has been true all the way up until the digital age.
Or even a major distributor. You know,
Absolutely, which is what I meant.
Yeah, I mean, the struggle, I think, for a lot of these guys is, you know, to get something up. If you create something in the old model, you want to get it on television, well, you have to get on a network.
Right.
You have to get carriage through a cable system. You have to find some way. Here, the internet is ubiquitous. You can put it up immediately. We had a great example of this, and I'll make this quick. We had a guy who invented this thing called the beer fridge. And what it did was, it was one of those little dorm fridges, and it had a robotic arm on the top, and the guy could sit in a chair, push a remote, and shoot a beer to him across the room. I mean, a very simple, random thing. He was an engineering student at Duke, and he just did it just as an engineering student at Duke. He really had no other intention of doing anything other than that with it. He shot the video, uploaded it to us and a bunch of other different places. We actually pay our content creators for the stuff that they submit if it gets to a certain level of views. So we pay him a $5 CPM. So he made like $9,000 off of people watching this video. Now, that wasn't his intention. His intention was just to shoot something cool and make it available. The thing successful and got so many views that he actually ended up on David Letterman. So, you know, you look at that, it's just some kid in his dorm room doing something random, and then the next thing you know, a month and a half later, he's on David Letterman.
And Burger King did that with Subservient Chicken.
Yeah.
And which was hilarious. It was great. This cost them next to nothing. I don't know if you guys remember what that was.
So I think there is an opportunity
it's all
for
over.
folks to get in, and new folks get in. That's kind of what I was saying before, is that, you know, I don't know what the next brands are going to be, but you better believe that the brands that exist today that know how to use this medium successful, and Jeremy's doing a great job with that. But I also believe you're going to see some new people pop up, and they're going to be the next thing.
To address your point, my comments really don't have anything to do with being with a major studio or not. So let me clarify a couple points so that maybe they can apply better to people who aren't at a major studio. First of all, the point about the content types and the media cues applies to everyone. And the point that I was trying to make is that people who are just doing user-generated content, that's just one medium. And we're talking about mobile, and we're talking about TV. And so I encourage independent content out there and smaller people to not just limit yourself to think about the full suite of all the mediums, because that's how we're approaching it. In a sense, we're on the same ground as everyone here in this room, because it's just new concepts and new ideas, and I'm just sitting with my artists and my people and saying, let's do this. You all can do the same thing. We really don't have that much of an advantage over you, because the success stories that I'm talking about weren't driven by major label spending that made the YouTube channel. I was working with a celebrity who already had names, but all the concepts are the same. So the first point is just to just the low end. Think about, when you're producing your content, think about, like, if it's good, you're going to end up on TV. Are you prepared for that, and do you have the content that's going to take you to that next level when that call comes? Because that's what we're shooting for. A lot of the stuff that we're doing the same concept we talked about, we're doing with baby bands. And so my second point that I'll throw out there is that nothing that we're talking about, this myth of just like the internet, anyone can jump in. Yes, sometimes you get lightning in a bottle, and you have something that was made by one person and was seen by millions. You can follow up what happens to those people after their bubble ended. It's two things that need to happen. The first is that most of these things, you're at a major studio, all that applies to me is resources. In other words, most of my success stories had a whole bunch of people who were working really hard to make them happen. So don't forget about that. If you're an independent producer, it's going to take work. You're competing with 45 billion other clips on YouTube. If you want to be seen out there, you can be on a major label and you can be my staff, or you can assemble your team, but granted, a ton of hard work and a ton of people working to get this stuff out there. So it doesn't matter if you're a major studio or not. It's just, I have 5 bodies who work for me. You can find your 5 bodies. Whatever it takes, you're going to need those people to get it done, because it doesn't just happen magically.
So
Yeah,
Rick, you asked a question earlier about innovation in DRM.
Yes.
There's always an opportunity for innovation in DRM, but I just wanted to make the comment to make sure we're all on the same page. There's quite a bit of business models that are enabled today and in commercially from mobile operators around the world as far as DRM business models are concerned. I mean, I'm sure most people are familiar with subscription and full track download and side load, but there's solutions today that allow you to share a song with a friend and have the friend listen to it for 10 seconds and then decide that they like it and buy it. And the same thing could be extrapolated to sharing of a video of protected content. The ability to load a bunch of music, or again extrapolated to video onto a memory card, onto an SD card, and then have the person be able to select the songs that they like and purchase the ones that they want, and not purchase the ones that they don't want. So there's the creativity is there. There's also the ability, when there's concerns about network traffic, the ability to push the contents, whether it's music or video, again, push that during evening hours when the network traffic is low, so that the folks can enjoy it when they wake up and purchase what they want and not purchase what they don't want.
But most of this stuff is so hard to even call it innovation, because we're talking about the state of things are right now is just almost pitiful. I mean, when you talk about the application that you described, there's so many different mobile applications and DRM-based things. Innovation is great, but let's start with stuff that works that way that consumers want it to work. I don't consider that innovation, and I don't think that we're there yet. And I think getting these studies back time and time again about how important radio still is to what people say is their #1 cue for finding out about local events and music. And it always blows me away, because I'm like, who listens to the radio anymore? Like, I just can't even, I'm like so digital that I can't believe it. It's because, and when we dig into the numbers and we go into all the research, the same thing comes back. You press one button and it's on. And you add even one more step to that process, and you're going to start to lose a huge chunk of your process. Most of the applications that we're talking about, send to a friend, you got to do 50 to execute that process. You got to accept it, then you got to sign up, and you got to do all this stuff. I haven't seen anything that's close. Shows is one of the things that we like, because it's one button. You press one button and it happens, and you don't have to do anything else. It doesn't type your phone.
So Jeremy, we talked about you wanted to take a look at the phone. I mean, we believe the solutions are out there today. I mean, Packet Video, we believe, offers a solution that does give you just a few clicks. I mean, we all realize that too many clicks and it's not going to happen.
But we're so far away. I mean, we were talking ideas of DRM 5-6 years ago. All these super distribution ideas are, I'm not on the technology side, but I encourage people in the technology, and especially the phone OS and the application side, I see things in products that are launched so many times, and I look at it and I'm like, this just won't work. It's too complicated. The native operating system to take a picture on the Razor is very difficult for a lot of people. It's like, we're so far. Doesn't it feel like we're still so far from these applications truly being easy to use and simple, or am I just not aware? It just feels so far to me.
I agree, and then I wanted to sort of think about a takeaway, but I would agree with that. I think that the simplicity of where you want, when you want, what you want is not quite there yet. It's not a one-button solution. We actually try to employ that as well.
We should talk afterwards then, because we think we're getting it down to
Okay, and Packet Video actually has been a pioneer in this. I was in San Diego when you guys were there too. But I think that even though that's not there yet, I completely agree with you. I think that the takeaway, I think maybe from what we're talking about, is that just the way cheap video cameras have leveled the playing field in production, and so the barrier to entry in production has declined, so that everybody essentially has an opportunity to go and do a very sufficiently high quality production to get out and represent what their creative idea is. Just the way that's happened, I think that the internet, mainly in the last 3 or 4 years with broadband adoption, has leveled the playing field on the distribution side. So before, where there was a bottleneck in distribution with cable operators and broadcast, now the internet allows you to take that inexpensive barrier of entry of production and get it out to a massive audience. So the technology is going to continue to improve. Packet Video, they may have a solution. We have a solution. I'm sure that Warner Brothers, all of us here are looking for the perfect storm, allows that instantaneous gratification that we're all looking for. It's not quite there yet, but nevertheless, what's fun and interesting about our industry right now is that here you have this perfect storm of people anywhere, out in a garage, creating a funny video and getting access to massive amounts of people, whether it's through us, through YouTube, through Metacafe, whomever, and they get an opportunity then to cross over into the broadcast world potentially, like South Park did and several others did, to really become a huge brand success. And when you look at it, that's never really been able to happen throughout any of our entertainment history because of these various bottlenecks.
So I think that's a very good point, Larry, in terms of, accessibility and then the issue of user simplified experience as well as the power of content and the artist.
The
I would-
technology is going to get better. It's going to
Right.
continue to get better.
I think it's key, given the limited amount of time though, is to solicit any questions from the audience, given you as the panel. Are there any questions before we do a wrap-up from the audience? No questions?
Oh, that's compelling. I guess we were compelling.
Come on.
We just did such a great
Please,
job. We
please.
answered every question.
I'm sorry, the man in the middle.
Larry? Yeah, we had three
The middleman.
changes here.
Not Jeff Oskino. Okay, no problem.
Larry Gitlin.
Go ahead.
You said one sentence back, please, about a blend of UGC and material together.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I think that sure, I think that UGC, and I think we're sort of narrowing our definition. UGC is, in our definition right now, is amateur created video. It's the kids that, it's folks, it's all over the place, people that do crazy wild stuff that's raunchy and crazy. That is certainly popular. It's certainly driving a lot of traffic. It helps drive our, 50, 80 million page views. But when you talk about making money, it's difficult to monetize because of the brands not wanting to necessarily attach themselves to that kind of content over and over. So we believe that to start making money from this, what's being proven out on the internet is that major brands, major television shows, like the success that Apple has, like the success that we have, come from a lot of major networks and big brands. So we see that the wedding of content with user-generated really becomes what we think is, it becomes the right mix. Now, in the middle of that is what Jeremy and the rest of us here are talking about, is the professional user-generated content where you have individual artists or other people that are a little more professionally done, where you do a show that's inexpensive, but still is able to have that UGC feel, and yet it's got a little bit higher level of quality and subject material, and something that the advertisers want to put their brand to. So wedding all those together to make the perfect storm of being able to make money from this.
I'll give you a direct thing that we did at MetaCafe. We worked with Stephen Bochco to create a channel called Cafe Confidential. Everybody knows Stephen Bochco, LA Law, those kind of shows. Anyway, he went through and filmed a bunch of vignettes himself. And he gave a bunch of topics, and it was kind of a video confessional is really what it was. And it was like, my first time, I can't believe I did this when I was drunk, my worst day at work. I mean, it's kind of random stuff. But he went through and shot about 50 vignettes of all kinds of different things. And then we brought in, and then we encouraged users to tell us your first time, tell us the worst thing you did when you were drunk, blah, blah, blah. So we took the titles that Stephen had shot, and then we encouraged users to create their own. And then we actually did bring a sponsor in around that. We brought American Apparel in, which is a clothing brand here in Los Angeles that kind of fits in with that little bit more of an edgy type of an environment. And we had, I think, some of those videos got over 2 million views individually, and the whole campaign over a course of 6 weeks was almost 60 million views. So at American Apparel, they're very happy to be involved in an environment like that. And Bochco's happy because he's got a lot of people engaging and looking at his content that he wouldn't see otherwise. And then lastly, the users are emotionally involved because you think about it, I almost equate this to like talk radio. If you ever listen to talk radio on your one-button radio, talk radio is just made up of random people calling in. The whole idea behind talk radio is that anybody can call in, and that's why anybody can call in. You can hear anything on there. But at the end of the day, it's like less than 1% of the people that actually call in or make up what the audience is actually made up of. So I almost like you have to think of it almost in the same way, is that people get engaged and want to watch and use these videos because they can feel a part of something. And I think you're going to see more and more of that emotional involvement with content going forward. I think with the Ashley thing, it's a great example of that, where all of a sudden I can be Ashley Tisdale. I can sing my own song, and maybe she'll see it, and maybe I'll get discovered. I mean, Andy Warhol 15 minutes of fame thing is so true, and now this platform is allowing people to maybe potentially have that happen. Now we all know it's a low number of people, but at the end of the day, everybody feels like, well, maybe it's going to be me.
So it seems that I was given the cutoff sign. I'm sorry, I probably should have started questions earlier, but I think there's one thing all the panelists agree on, is that the ubiquity of accessibility drives traffic, and that's what creates the opportunity set. The value of that traffic is very much dependent on the quality of the content, driven by the production itself of artists and the sensitivity of the advertising people to the value of that content, and how brands look to distribute themes. And then the stickiness and permanence of that will all be based on the experience, how simple it is.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I don't know if we've came to any wisdom about what is the right business model, what the next hot deal is, but I think in the context of understanding these three drivers, addressing these drivers and solving any problem next to them, I think will create a lot of value. Please join me in thanking the panelists.
I keep giving out
So,
somebody
are
else's.
you based
Jeremy's
in-
actually. Should give that to everybody.
So let's meet next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Thanks a lot.
Yes.